Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Ted Santos. I am the one and only Ted Santos, and I am your host of Straight Talk. It is Sunday, and Sunday evenings at 7 o'clock, I come to you live and I talk to you about relationships, social challenges, money, mindset. We take on some of the politically incorrect topics and we look at them from several different perspectives. And tonight I will be doing exactly that. And we will take a little bit of what I did on Friday, and we were talking about uh, the effects of promiscuity on the body, on the mind. And today, well, you see the topic. So we are Straight Talk. We are the talk show that is made for men, by men. And ladies don't want to miss it. We talk about the things that many women should know about these things for some reason. Our news, our education system, our families sweep many, many things under the rug and they pretend that they are just not happening. And Friday was a great example. It was amazing how there's still many women out there saying that I'm giving my opinion after I pulled up reports from NIH and I had other medical professionals. I had lot interviews of people who talked about what specifically happens to the biochemistry of a woman, and people believe it was my opinion. Well, today I'm going to pull up. I'm going to do a screen share, and I'm going to share some things about what's happening in our economy, just from divorce. This is going to be multifaceted. So buckle up. It's been a while since I've done what I would consider an ugly conversation, and this is going to be one of them. It's going to be ugly because I'm also going to make some suggestions and recommendations to get off the trajectory that it seems some people are addicted to. So I'm going to make some suggestions to kill an addiction, like a runaway train. I'm going to get rid of it. What's going on, country boy? PJ. Yeah, one of the biggest problems in putting women in a workforce across the board is women are not as productive as men. And I've already addressed that in another video, but that's a cost to us as a society. We ignore a lot of costs that we have. You know, it's amazing what's going on. The Scout, what's going on, man? Yes, yes. Um, so it's easy to talk about this in business. So I read, I forget which book it was, but I was reading about, uh, I read about this law firm. Law firm was doing $450 million in revenue. Successful. They had attorneys all over the country. I'm sure in other countries. And one day the employees came to work and there was a padlock on the door. No one understood what happened. The company went bankrupt. See, $450 million were coming in. So everyone was looking at, as long as money's coming in, as long as there's money in the bank, man, we're doing fine. Well, what they didn't see is as they were spending, they were making 450 million, they were spending more than that. They just went out of business. And that is not just limited to companies. People live their lives that way, right? They make $100,000 a year. And when you look at their mortgage and car note and credit cards and the amount of things they buy, they're spending more than they actually earn. They have a negative net worth. If their car had to be paid off today and the mortgage and the credit cards, they would they would have to liquidate. Chapter 7 liquidation. They'd be in trouble. But they see that $100,000 coming in and everything looks good. And that's kind of the way it may look for some people. So there are lots of, you could say the divorce industry creates lots of jobs. It's a whole industry and it's thriving and it's doing well. But even the divorce industry itself gets affected by what I'm going to present. you know, uh, Running a business, a nation, a family. I mean, there definitely has to be some level of savviness in finance. So you can't just look at what's coming in and feel that everything is okay without understanding what it's costing to have what comes in come in. And it's costing us a lot to have divorce in the United States. It's costing us a lot. And no one's watching it. And well, I shouldn't say no one, because there are organizations that are looking at it and they're looking at some real numbers. So before I dive into this, I ask that you smash that thumbs up button, that like button as you come in. Uh, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, smash that subscribe and hit the bell so you see everything that I put out, videos, shows, everything. You'll get notifications. If you haven't joined me on Instagram, follow me there. We're doing it live there. We're going to have a interactive show. So if you would like to call in and comment or ask questions or share something, you can call in at, let me give you the number here. Sorry, the call-in number is 323-642-1387. That's 323-642-1387. And our conversation today is divorce killing the economy, right? So I had a second topic that I thought about, and is divorce eroding morals, ethics, and the economy? Is it costing us? What is it costing us? Why aren't we talking about that? Even the news. So no one thinks that this is my opinion. I'll do a screen share and we're going to talk about it. I'm also going to share some information about some of the, you could say, indirect financial costs, right? But these are, I guess, when you talk about money and measuring money, that's going to be quantitative. But I want to talk about some qualitative costs and how that can impact communities. It also impacts financial capacity, money making opportunities. And I'm going to talk about a book that is taught. It's called Coming Apart. I've mentioned it before. And we're going to look at this divide that's happening in the US and the cost of not being prepared for what's actually happening. So let's see what we have. Yes. That's a good point. If divorce lawyers, if everyone was divorced, then divorce lawyers would lose their jobs, right? So smash the like it's your ex. Good point, right? So mainstream media is not, they're not talking about this. So let me read to you what my thoughts were on this. Let me I like to keep two screens going so I can always see what's happening here. So here are my thoughts. And you guys know these things, but in 1968, a law was passed that changed the divorce rate. The law called for no fault divorce. Before that, there was accountability in marriages, right? So you could look at who was at fault, who destroyed the marriage. After 1968, people no longer felt it necessary to make the marriage work. Just get an easy divorce. When you look closer, you see women are the initiators of over 70% of divorces. A major reason is irreconcilable differences. When people go through divorce, it distracts them from being a good parent and a productive worker. This is costing corporations because of reduced productivity from workers and the taxpayer because children can become a problem for the law. While marriage has traditionally been great for children and the community, there no longer appears to be an incentive for men to marry. We all see where the marriage rate is. Yet, women continue to have babies as single mothers. Can the economy continue to subsidize unproductive workers and unemployed single mothers? So that's sort of a big picture of where I'm coming from. And I'm going to bring up some stats that support exactly what I just stated. And I've got all these tabs open. I just have to make sure tap into the right one here. So with women initiating the majority of divorces, and it's for irreconcilable differences, it's men that are getting hammered financially. A lot of guys are, you hear women saying, well, I met a guy, great guy. He's divorced and he's been financially destroyed. And many women are like, well, I don't want to be with you. You don't have the finances to be in a relationship. You have too many financial obligations to your ex-wife, alimony, child support. So even guys get hurt for dating. Um, so we're at a record low for marriages. They started recording marriage rates in 1865, and never have they been this low. So what are we seeing? People are saying, women are screaming, well, the divorce rate is dropping. It's dropping because marriage rates are dropping. Typically, first year marriages have a 40% divorce rate. So we're getting less marriages, so there are less marriages being divorced in the first year because less men are proposing. And just for the women who want to say, well, you guys are screwed up, well, we can look at the whole alphabet community, and two men get married, they still have divorces. It's 20% divorce rate. Two women get married, they have a 45% divorce rate. So that tells you something that women are not really paying attention. And when two women are married, the women are complaining that they want to be entitled. They don't want to be responsible for what happens in the relationship. So it's the same thing men are saying. So women believe they're getting away from men because men are so horrible and they just go to another woman and they end up with the same problem. So what is it? You can't hide from yourself. Everywhere you go, there you are. So I want to pull up some stats now. So this is an organization. It's Marriage and Family Wellness, Corporate America's Business, a Marriage Commission research report in partnership with Life Innovations, Inc. And this is recent. Da, 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 copyright 2006. Let's see, that doesn't work. Okay. Let me see if how does that work? Okay, I can do this then. So here's where people may not see that uh, divorce is costing us. They say while traditionally the world of business and the world of marriage and family relationships have remained disconnected, it is clear they have a major impact on each other. Building marriage and family wellness improves a company's overall financial health, while ignoring these opportunities can decrease a company's profitability. American trends in marriage and family are changing rapidly. Over 90% of all Americans will marry at some point in their lives, yet almost 50% of these relationships end in dissolution, and cohabitation is quickly becoming the norm for couples of all ages. And it's interesting. So, marriage, however, still confers certain unique benefits on participants. Based on wealth of academic research, married couple tend to have healthier lifestyles, live longer, have more satisfying sexual relationships, have more economic assets, and have children that tend to do better academically and emotionally. Employees in failing relationships cost employers money. There are substantial productivity declines for workers in failing relationships. That includes cohabitation. These workers often have serious health concerns, increased stress and anxiety, increased rates of depression, increased rates of substance abuse. These workers directly cost companies in higher healthcare expenditures and indirectly through societal effects of broken families. Conversely, employees in successful relationships increase profits for their employers. These workers are more stable, more committed to their employer, and are often considered more dependable and motivated. And just as a side, if you notice, a lot of guys or people who move up in corporate America to the executive levels are almost always married. I don't, you know, I remember when I was the first woman I lived with, um, there were two partners who owned the company, and he kept saying to me, "Hey, man, you should get married." He was a CFO, so he was expressing tax benefits of being married and having children. I just didn't buy it, but I understood where he was coming from. Uh, Employees in health, and he and the other partner were definitely married. This goes on to say employees in healthy relationships are also physically healthier, experiencing fewer chronic health problems like stress, anxiety, and depression, saving companies money and overall healthcare expenditures. When companies invest in physical and relational wellness of their workers, returns on investment can range between about $1.50 and $6.85 for every dollar spent on these types of programs. Interesting. So, um, creating programs that make healthier employees. So let's get to what this is costing. So that gave you sort of a snapshot and a big picture of what this company is looking at. Just some stats: the United States has the highest rates of both marriage and divorce in the world. Marriage continues to be the most popular voluntary institution that over 90% of individuals in our society marry at least once. Annually, there are about 2.3 million marriages and about 1.2 million divorces. That's according to the Bureau of Census. Each year, about half of the marriages occurs between couples where one or both have been married before. Because almost 50% of marriages will end in divorce, marriage is often seen as a risky decision. Most divorces involve children, and more than 1 million children are impacted by their parents' divorce. The average age of individuals, bop, bop, bop. So let's. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the cost of divorce and maritable problems to a company. Hey, thanks, Imperator. Hey, PJ, I'm glad you said that because that's what I want to talk about. This whole idea of getting married for love. It's just showing more and more incompetence that people think that that's the reason you get married because you love someone. Marriage is a legal binding contract. And I've never heard of someone signing a contract, a legal binding contract, because they love the person. Women are pushing that on men. So here are the costs of divorce and marital problems to a company. So as can be seen from the White and Gallagher review, I can drop the link in the description for you guys. Let's see. There is overwhelming social science data supporting healthy marriage as an achievable ideal. So let's pause right there. A healthy marriage. So we need to talk about something that I discussed Friday. And Friday I did a topic asking if promiscuity is hurting women. And in the research that I did, so there's a study I found years ago, and it said if a woman has sex with 6 men, the number 6, she's 3 times less likely to be in an emotionally stable relationship. As those numbers go higher, the less likely she's going to be in an emotionally stable relationship. Here's what women need to understand about their bodies. There's something called the bond break, even if it's a one-night stand. See, the way nature set us up is women depend greatly on oxytocin to bond with a man. They also get it when they're pregnant, so they bond with the child. If by chance a woman is deficient on these are the women who are killing their children because they didn't bond. They don't have enough oxytocin to bond with the child, or they abandon, leave the child in a dumpster. But women secrete oxytocin and they bond with a man. It's what nature does to ensure the procreation, the perpetuation of the species. So when a woman secretes oxytocin and she's with a guy and she bonds and she wants to have sex, and during sex, so she's secreting oxytocin before sex. And then during sex, she secretes significantly more. As men, we secrete a lot less, and testosterone blocks it. So then a woman breaks off the relationship and the oxytocin secretion stops. So she bonds and then breaks. And then she meets another guy. She bonds and then breaks. When a woman does that over and over and over again, eventually starts to cause emotional trauma. That's why these women will be less likely to be in stable relationships. So this creates a huge problem. And this is saying healthy marriages are good for companies, it's good for society, it's good for everyone. And if a woman is being promiscuous and she's going through this bond break cycle, she's going to be emotionally unstable because of the emotional trauma caused by the bond break. And there are all these. I did this video. If you haven't seen the video from Friday, you have to watch it, because I introduced a video of a woman who was talking about how it takes 6 months for a woman's body to adjust to a man's DNA, right? So if a woman, especially women on birth control, it takes 6 months for her body to not attack and go after sperm, the man's DNA in her body. So then and so she's with several guys in the course of a year. Um, she's putting her body through a lot of different trauma. And so if you marry this woman who's been promiscuous, you are inheriting the emotional and physical trauma that she has imposed on herself because someone told her she can do what men do. So I needed to address that because they're talking about how important it is for couples to have healthy relationships, because they actually bring that to work. So what else are they saying? They're asking a question: should marriage and divorce be the concern of business owners and executives? Moving forward, let us begin to examine the empirically validated research that might convince an accountant, business owner, or CEO to invest in the marital health of employees. And if you saw back, it said for every dollar you invest in your companies to be healthy, right? So if you can give them skills at work that they can use at home to have healthier marriages, you're going to get back money. And it said from $1.50 to $6.85. So it's worth it to invest in your employees. Investing in a woman who's been promiscuous is going to cost a little more because of the amount of emotional trauma. So current research and thinking from the world's economics and social sciences highlight two major conclusions. Happily married employees increase profitability. Unhappily married employees decrease profitability. The 1.2 million annual U.S. divorces cost taxpayers an estimated $30 billion in federal and state expenditures. And that's according to a book by Schramm written in 2006. Each divorce costs society about $25,000 to $30,000 because of the increase in costs of supporting people with housing, food stamps, bankruptcies, problems with youth, and other related expenses. Marriage and divorce change dynamically over time. Okay. So that's the cost to society. $30 billion. Welfare and crime. What about the crime that comes as a result? And we have to put these guys and girls in penitentiaries. So this is failing relationships cost companies money. One notable research project, and I saw this research, and I'm going to give you these numbers, but it's amazing how they underestimate. What this was initially, this is the number that people thought. One notable research project estimates that $6 billion is lost by American businesses due to decreased productivity stemming from marriage and relationship difficulties. These expenses, and that was back in 1996, they gave that number of $6 billion. These expenses are borne directly by corporations, owners, and shareholders. Employees in failing relationships cost money to the companies for whom they work. An unprofitable work environment results from many factors experienced by employees in failing relationships: increased Absenteeism, presenteeism, being that means presenteeism means being physically present but mentally absent, right? So you're thinking about your divorce or bad relationship. The other costs are decreased health, increased anxiety and stress, and increased health insurance costs. For the average employee making $20 an hour, the projected cost that employee divorcing is over $8,000. They have an appendix for that. Um, so now we're going to get to some numbers. So that was in 1996. They were saying it was costing corporate America $6 billion. Hey PJ, exactly. It's biochemistry. People think it's love, and it's just biochemistry. It's just that's how nature just ensures that you keep making more human babies, more human beings. Yeah, the and look, there are lots of laws that have been put on the book, country boy, and lots of them have been changed over time. You criticize the wedding, huh? Yeah, that's you're interesting, right? So and that's why even for a woman to bond with her child, it's biochemistry, and when those biochemicals are off, that woman will not care about that child. That's why you hear these stories of women killing their children and throwing them in the trash alive. So here's now we're going to get into a 21st century numbers on what it's costing, what divorce is costing. Divorcing employees often have serious health concerns. Failing relationships produce stress and anxiety, and divorce is one of the most stressful life events one can experience. Now, just let's take a step back. In a large company, think about it. A percentage of your employees are going to have healthy relationships, healthy marriages, cohabitation. And then there's going to be a percentage that are unhealthy, and they will just stay together. But then there are others who are headed for divorce. Another percentage are in the middle of one, and then another are just coming out of one. So this just said it's one of the most stressful life events one can experience. So if you are headed for it, in the middle of it, or just coming out of it, you're going to be distracted. And so it goes on to say these effects have direct implications for the workplace. Direct, not indirect. This is direct. When couples' marriages are failing and heading towards unhealthy and relational disease, companies can bear the consequences in many ways, primarily as employees experience stress. Their physical health suffers. Couples in marriages of poorer quality have lower immune functioning than people in more satisfying relationships. This marital stress spills over into job functioning. So, just to give you a side, there's another website that I found. And in that website, it said when people are dealing with divorce, their work productivity drops by 50 to 75%. Can you imagine? You're in a great relationship, you're working your butt off, you're happy to do it, your relationship, your marriage starts falling apart, and boom, you're working 50 to 75% less than you were. And they said that's not even including time off for court and dealing with financial issues and child custody. So that's a lot of money uh, companies are losing in workplace productivity, all because of one word, divorce. Now, this report is going to give us a number, and the number is this. Stress related issues cost corporate America $300 billion a year. That's in a book written in 2005. Relationally stressed employees are more likely to have high rates of absenteeism and thus hurt the company's overall productivity. And remember, they call it presenteeism, which means that you're at work, you're present, but your mind is somewhere else. $300 billion is what it's costing corporate America. So even if you work in the divorce industry, you are going to be less productive as a divorce attorney going through divorce or any other aspects in the courthouse. You are less productive. Everyone is affected by divorce. So imagine you have, let's say, a medium-sized company. You have 1,000 employees. The divorce rate is about 50%. But let's say 40% of your employees they're either headed for divorce, in the middle of one, or just coming out of one. That could easily be 40% of your employees who are less productive, anywhere from 50 to 75% less productive. Yet you are paying them like they are working at 100% capacity, and you're not getting the work that you need out of them. The company is going to suffer in terms of profits. So what do? You lay people off. And what does that do? That causes stress on couples that are together, because now someone's been laid off, or even the divorce couples are going to be more stressed. And that just makes things worse, because when your company lays off 250 people, and then GM has to lay off 1,000 people, and then that affects the home builders who lay off 1,000. Now GM has got to lay off 10,000, and the home builders and the washing machines. It's like there's a relationship between divorce and our overall economy. And it might be hard. A few years ago, I talked about this, but it was hard for people to see the relationship between layoffs in corporations and divorce. But if you have unproductive or significantly less productive employees, that's unsustainable. I mean, we already have a problem of women are not as productive as men. So corporations have already had to subsidize that. That's why now you need two people working in a home, because how do you pay for a less productive employee? Well, you raise prices. And now that we have no fault divorce, you can just walk away from a marriage and say, well, I don't feel love. And as you put it, PJ, my biochemistry is not it's not secreting the way I did, which made me have all these feelings. So basically, there are a lot of people, and since over 70% of divorces are initiated by women, there are a lot of women who have no idea how to make a relationship work. They're depending solely on biochemistry as um, a feedback loop, right? So, you know, if you hit your hand with a hammer, you get feedback to your brain to say, don't do that again. That was painful. So for a woman to get feedback that she feels love, she needs her biochemistry to say, I feel good. This is dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. And as long as these are secreting, this means the relationship is good. So there are so many women who have asked for divorces from men who are actually doing a good job. So to make a relationship work and you're just depending solely on biochemical secretions and claiming that that's love and I don't feel love, then that's really irresponsible. Because if all you can depend on is a biochemical secretion as a feedback loop, right? So how is my relationship doing? Well, let me check my biochemistry. Not secreting enough oxytocin and dopamine. Oh, I've got to go. So no responsibility to actually make the relationship into something that will secrete those biochemicals. So it's just the man's job, and if he's doing everything else perfectly. So the excitement. So a woman might cheat because she needs excitement. And then she leaves the guy because she was excited cheating with the guy, and that got the biochemicals going. And then she leaves her husband only to find out that she's back in the same situation. So this is really poor decision making, and it's costing society 30 billion, right? I read, and corporate America is costing 300 billion, and that 300 billion dollar cost eventually trickles down to everyone. We all pay. Corporations can't keep losing all the billions of dollars a year because of a loss of workplace productivity. You lay people off. So then we're all directly impacted. And then the economy goes into a downward spiral because people are panicking, which then creates more divorces for even relationships that were just doing okay. So this, I want to read just a little bit more of this. um, so I just read, so I'm going to read this whole paragraph. Stress-related issues cost corporate America $300 billion annually. Relationally stressed employees are more likely to have high rates of absenteeism, and this hurts a company's overall productivity. Perhaps even more damaging to companies' financial health is presenteeism, which may go unnoticed for longer periods of time. Couples in failing relationships are more likely to resort to physical abuse or violence to resolve tensions at home, and subsequent domestic violence cost corporate America up to 7.9 million paid workdays of lost productivity annually. Let's see. A recent study of one community also found a correlation between increase in levels of marital dissatisfaction and increased levels of diagnosable alcohol abuse disorders. In fact, unhappily married couples were almost 4 times more likely to have a partner abusing alcohol than in happily married couples. Those with alcohol problems skip or miss work 30% more than, let's see, 30% more than those without such problems. So this goes in, and I want to just make another comment. So NIH, National Institute of Health, also said that there was a correlation between women and promiscuity and alcohol dependency. Or they also saw a correlation between female promiscuity and mental disorders. And they didn't find the same relationship, the same effect on men from promiscuity, right? You know, if a man is too promiscuous, it could eventually have an effect because there is a bond to break eventually with men, but just not as much. So this goes on to all kinds of high healthcare costs and higher tax liability and then benefits of marriage. But I wanted to present those numbers. $300 billion is a huge number. And the flip side, I think I said this already, couples in healthy relationships, well, I didn't say this. Couples in healthy relationships are more effective at work when it comes to communication and resolving conflicts. So what that says is there are skills you can transfer from home to work and work to home. It's why corporations need to be thinking about investing in their employees so that they have the skills to resolve conflict, effectively communicate. What else? We have the ability, social skills that even go beyond the home, the married couple, right? Networking also benefits the married couple. Listening skills, there are all kinds of things. So I want to take some calls on this and get some thoughts from you guys. PJ, how are men? So men actually secrete oxytocin, and there's another biochemical men secrete. Women have very little of it. It's called vasopressin, and uh, vasopressin binds with several. It binds with oxytocin, with testosterone, with dopamine, and when vasopressin, it's like an enhancer, right? But um, so when it binds with testosterone, it makes a man significantly more aggressive. When it binds with oxytocin, it can cause the man to bond and have these same deep love feelings that you'll say a woman has. But the difference is that uh, a man can have even stronger feelings because oxytocin is just in the woman's brain. Vasopressin takes it throughout the man's entire body. Um, and that's why some guys the breakup may be harder on some men because the vasopressin binds with oxytocin. And the other thing is vasopressin, when it binds with testosterone, it makes a man go towards conflict, towards risk. And since women don't have that, oxytocin causes women to avoid conflict, avoid risks. That's why they don't run businesses and take the kinds of risks that men do. Now, here's the interesting part. Women who have too much vasopressin, their bodies and brains don't handle it. Those women become prostitutes, alcoholics, drug addicts, criminal. Basically, they degenerates, right? They don't fit into society. When they're little girls, they may have some things in common with little boys, but as they grow up, they're never able to handle it. Vasopressin is huge. If a woman's love is based on oxytocin, man, but in some ways, PJ, right? So you just have to understand and accept that women function certain ways, right? You can't be upset with them, right? This is their biochemistry. As a man, you understand that. You, as a man, you'll need to be able to manage that relationship uh, based on having accurate knowledge. So I'm going to take two callers, area code 870, and I'm also going to take area code 570. 870, you're live and on the air with Straight Talk. What's your name and where you calling from?
What it is, Ted? What's going on today?
What's going on? How you feeling, country boy? Everything cool?
Yeah, I had a week to cool off since I posted that post, man, in the chat group.
Okay,
But
I saw you.
it,
Hey, hold up.
yeah, man.
One second. I want you to go first, country boy. 570. What's your name and where you calling from?
This is Brother Enrique Muhammad.
Hey, Enrique.
Calling
Thanks for
from
calling.
Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. How you doing, Ken?
All right. Hey, good to hear from you, man. So let Kendrick go first, and then I want to hear what your thoughts are on this topic of the cost of divorce.
Well, right now, I'm just listening to you, and I appreciate the amount of facts that you put in. So I'm gonna let the brother go ahead. I don't have any comments at this point.
Okay.
I've just been gaining a lot of information.
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Kendrick.
Ted, all I know is the bastards that created these laws need to be they need to be revoked, and they servers are no longer going to be required because they just held just accountable for their actions with the laws of these women is what their body said. I ain't pointing the finger. I'm just saying both of them need to be held accountable on both ends.
Right, and it's look, divorce is costing our society a lot. Like, and I didn't even touch on the emotional trauma that happens to the children. Like that it is so that look, Enrique can support me on this. When you take a parent out of the home, it's emotional trauma. A child could even, or even an adult, but a child can have emotional trauma when their pet dies. If they lose a toy that they're really attached to. So emotional trauma can happen for lots of reasons, but it becomes pretty major when you lose a parent. And so we're not even addressing what happens when you have generations of this emotional trauma from a parent no longer being in the home. And even if the parent's still in their life, it still has a profound impact on them no longer being there.
I ain't trying to turn your show into no religious thing, but I speak from my own personal experience here. This it breeds when them kids become in an emotional unstable situation like this. That breeds generational curses here
Okay.
with the divorce and all this stuff that these women doing, and part of what they dad is doing too. That's creating a household ungodly situations here, and they repeating themselves.
So
The
maybe
kids gonna grow up doing the same daggone thing.
people repeat their childhood. They do that.
That's exactly what they doing. I can't fault the kids here, but I can sure here fault their mom and dad, and I can fault the system too.
Well, and so this is why I brought up also couples in healthy marriages are much more effective in the workforce, right? And even if you're a stay-at-home mother, you're going to be much more effective in raising your children and educating them. So there's a book called Coming Apart by a gentleman named Charles Murray. And Charles Murray said that there's this super upper class being created. And what it looks like is um, a man and a woman who both have high IQs. They may both be working. They get married and they want their children to be smart and successful. So they do a lot to create an environment where these children are successful. For one, there's talk that intelligence, there's some hereditary factors. So if you have two very intelligent parents who make children, the children are already, they have a head start, right? So they're inheriting a certain amount of genetics. So then you have an environment that the parents create together. And if the mother goes to be in a stay at home, she's making sure the home environment is educational and enjoyable, but it's educational in a way that that child is going to grow up and be a senator, a CEO, a congressman. They're going to be some leader somewhere, and they are going to not only be well educated, they're going to be not only intelligent, they'll be well educated about many things. They will travel, and they will have a head start in intelligence, problem solving, a wider perspective of the world because they may have traveled, and the things that their parents would have exposed them to will give them a greater preparation for life. So understand that there's a class of people across races that are doing this on purpose. And now you contrast that with and God, I hate to say this, but if women have sex with too many different men and it's causing emotional trauma, it is going to negatively impact her intelligence. And she's going to start making poor decisions about her choice of mates, her choice of food, and she's going to choose a less suitable man and be impregnated by him. And they're going to make a baby that won't be able to compete with that couple who intentionally chose someone who's intelligent. They intentionally raised their children to be more prepared and more competitive in the world. So if a woman is having too much sex with a lot of different men, emotionally traumatizing herself, she's going to make poor choices. She's going to have a poor choice of a man to mate with, and she's going to be creating an underclass. And this guy Charles Murray actually talks about that, but he only focuses on the white community because he said he didn't want to deal with racism. And he says that's starting to happen in the white community, and it's been happening in the black community for decades. So that's why
Oh, yes, sir.
he calls the book Coming Apart, because there this division of more and more these working class are becoming poorer. And he talked about other reasons, but just think the black community has been doing that already for decades, and it's going to be very difficult if a woman is making poor mating choices. She's going to be creating an underclass and not even realize it. And when you now have these children being raised in a single family home, you are creating intentional underclass of people.
See, that's the reason why if you notice, uh, in the past how I try to screen women, I usually try to mention the women along the opposite side of Steve Urkel, those rocket physics, those brain surgeons, and all those different heart specialists. Those the type of women that I be trying to go after. She
Okay.
might not be the family thing, and she might not be no prima donna, or nothing like that, but when you look at that female, from an economical choice, she gonna be the choice that a lot of the super elite go for. They got the money, they can fix her up. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right.
As far as physical appearance is concerned, but now that intellect kid, I don't have that intellect. But imagine somebody breeding with somebody with that kind of intellect.
Absolutely.
See, that's what I'm
Can I
talking
say
about.
something?
Absolutely.
Please do
And Enrique, after you go, Enrique, I'll bring in area code 310. You can go. But go ahead, Enrique.
Yes, sir. I wanted to say this. And I'm in the Nation of Islam, and the minister gave us the body of knowledge is called How to Give Birth to a God.
Okay.
And in that body of knowledge, it's like a whole science of how to prepare to have superior children. But one of the things he learned from his teacher, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Enrique, hold on. So, someone has
Yes,
background noise. Everyone go on mute while Enrique is talking. I can hear. Sounds like someone's doing got a butcher knife working there. You sharpening a knife? Go ahead, Enrique. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Yeah, so one of the things the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us is that he said there's three sciences that they keep from us. And one of the sciences is the science of business.
Right.
The other science is the science of warfare. And the other science is the science of mating. And if you ever do any research on the ruling class and the monarchies, one of the things that they learn, and this is how power structures are perpetuated, is they learn how to accurately, because if you can breed a horse and have a thoroughbred, or you can breed a pit and have a thoroughbred, it's not hard to figure out that how to breed someone who can carry the power structure down. And if you really look at how this country is run, it's not run by how the world is run. It's not run by governments. It's run by families.
Exactly.
So the knowledge of how to produce power structures is known. And one of the things that they feed us through these sitcoms and television shows, and you can read it in a book that breaks it down, is by Ralph Epperson. It's called The New World Order.
Okay.
He specifically shows how there was, and there's another book by John Coleman called The Tavistock Institute. They both specifically show how the aim of the modern family is to show a dysfunctional design, so that because people don't do what they say, they do what they see.
Right.
The mind's eye is designed to duplicate what it sees. So the way that they have the imaging in front of us, we're seeing all these bad examples of families and relationships, and that's designed to deteriorate the power structure of how a family is empowered. So what you were saying from the dude Charles Murray, and what the brother was saying is like, we have to definitely become aware that the target is to degenerate I'm gonna say the original people's genetics, because it's our genetics that carries our information, and if it's properly cohabit and interact, then those things can be enhanced. But if we don't do that, if we deteriorate, and that's one of the main things that they work to protect, is all of their efforts are codified into their genes and their DNA. So they don't want to share that with an idiot or somebody who doesn't know how to make them a better version of themselves. So that's all I wanted to say, is that that's right in the line with that.
And if I may add on to what you're saying real quick, bro, another thing that those geneticists say about that DNA, they tell us that, our DNA remembers things.
Absolutely.
I just found that out, just recently. They talking about your DNA remembers stuff.
Yes, sir. So one of the interesting things about DNA is literally a record of it keeps a record, and what we don't know is that depending on how you live your lifestyle, you basically create a record in your genetic material, whether not only just physically, but also it gives the tendencies intellectually of that person to the whoever they're sharing their genes with. So finding somebody that's best suitable, health wise, mentally wise, and genetic wise, to produce with. And this is one of the things that the ruling classes does, and this was always a common secret among monarchies, whether they was in China, Africa, or any other part of the world, is to continue to enhance their genetics and their characteristics. The way they have us socializing, we literally mate like animals and insects.
Right.
They have us like our socialization ain't got nothing to do with our aspirations. It's totally a momentary, biochemical, biological, emotionally centered. Like how we meet each other most of the time, it's in the club or some other place we're being entertained. It ain't got nothing to do with personal enhancement most of the time.
Right.
So we like birds. Like, how birds have mating dances. We get together and shake ourselves with each other, and that's how we say, okay, this is the person I'm going to have I'm having chemistry with them on the dance floor or on some basic carnal level like that, and that's how we cohabit.
Exactly. Well said.
All this stuff said about the Pookies and the Ray Rays, the thugs and the criminal low life, that's by design. All that stuff that this brother here talking about, that's stuff by design. That's not our biology.
Yes, sir.
And the ruling class know exactly what they're doing.
Well, if you're not educated, you're only going to do what they put in front of you, that they tell you, that they're indirectly telling you what to do. So the romance books and romance novels. I mean, you guys have heard me say this before.
Come on with it. Absolutely.
So, this is probably the first time in human history that people have 100% chosen their own spouse before your parents had involvement, either arranged or semi-arranged. A gentleman by the name of John Keats wrote a book in 1817 or 1819, somewhere around that time, 1817. And it was called La Femme dans Merci, something like that. And that book, no one really paid attention to it until the 1850s, and it caught on like wildfire. And what it did is it reshaped the trajectory of relationships. So relationships went from being arranged, or like you just said, Enrique, there was a science to mating, right? Your parents were involved, and it was perpetuating power and creating generational wealth. Even if your families were not that wealthy, if two families had an acre and they married their son and daughter, you had 2 acres, and the next generation married and got 4 acres, right? So over time they created wealth. So that book disrupted that, and it had people want this romance, because La Belle Dame Sans Merci was a romance novel. So by the 1850s, when it caught on, people didn't want involvement like their parents. They wanted to start doing it on their own. So here we are, you know, about 170 years later, and we've gotten rid of our parents' wisdom and understanding of relationships. So before, people were being, except for, let's say, the poorest class, it could have been some form of indentured servancy, but basically it was family values. My family and your family, like,
Yeah, it is.
so my parents may be looking at 2 or 3 different families, and they're going to match me up with the one that's most compatible and has you know, perhaps the greatest economic benefit to the families coming together. I mean, that's how you get kingdoms coming together, you know, marrying. That's on a big, you know, much bigger scale. But we've abandoned that for
Right.
the feelings of that book by John Keats, written in 1817, and Hollywood put that on steroids. And now you have music that makes people feel things and all that stuff. So
You said John Keats.
no, Keats, Keats, John Keats, and it's
Okay, yes, sir, I got it.
La Belle Dame. You Googled it already?
No, I just took his name now. I'll find it.
Yep. Um, and yeah, I'll add this too. So Charles Fourier, he's a French dude, so I pronounce his last name probably incorrectly. But he's a utopian sociologist and French philosopher, and he's the one who's credited for creating the word feminism back in 1837. And it was always the intent to get the father out of the home. So, you know, feminism has been around, it's had an intent. You could say the Black community was a test market to see if it works, and it's effective, and it'll be rolled out to the rest of the planet. And this perhaps this pandemic is a perfect time to make it happen. I don't want to get sidetracked by that, but Enrique, that video of Farrakhan, I actually saw him talk that, and I haven't been able to find it. If you could send it to me, that would be great.
Yes, sir.
I wanted to share that with some people. So, you know, I couldn't find it on YouTube for some reason. So if you have access to it, and
they've been taken down. Honestly, they've been taking down anything from him and certain other members of the nation. So
okay.
YouTube, Instagram,
But if you
yeah,
have it,
it's getting a little difficult these days.
Yep, if you have it, I would greatly appreciate if you could send that to me, because that's a major point.
Yes, sir.
And that's the point of this conversation here, right? So you completely got what I was saying. The guy Charles Murray says an underclass is being created because people don't understand the science of mating. They don't. They're going for barnyard animal strategies. I have a feeling my biochemistry is pumping. It feels good. Let's make a baby. Right? What was that show? Let's Make a Deal, right? So let's make a baby because it feels
yes, sir.
good. And we'll get married.
The thing is,
hold on, Kendrick. We'll get married, and if you're not doing the things to make the biochemical secretions, I want a divorce. And it's the man that gets devastated in that. So dudes are walking away, understandably. What were you gonna say, Kendrick? And I want 310 to go also. But go ahead, Kendrick.
it ain't let's make a deal. Let's make degenerates. That's what that should have been.
All right.
Cause that's what I see. When you let these women choose sexually wise with these, like I say, dudes they sexually attracted to, as opposed to the dudes that got all this intellect and know how to carry themselves to. Them the dudes that they should have been programmed and mating with. But society say otherwise. Go out there and just screw them in dudes if you can.
Right.
Let trains and everything else get ran on you. So that's where we at.
This is where we are is it's costing us, and no one is watching the
because the lawmakers around.
No,
the
no,
lobbyists,
forget
the lawmakers, the ruling class.
No, it's costing us. Divorce is costing corporate America $300 billion a year. It's costing society $30 billion, and we're doing damage to our children. It's costing us a lot. This has nothing to do with
that they say we are broke nation. How are we broke when who told you to get into all this debt? That's how I look at it.
I understand. What
What I'm saying?
we've got to start taking a step back. Enrique was saying we've got to start looking at uh, how what we're doing is costing us so much, and it's almost like we're addicted to it, even though it's costing us. But no one's talking about the cost. If we're going to get on a better track, this whole science of mating definitely needs to become a mainstream conversation. However, no one's going to do it because no one realizes that what we're doing now is costing us so much. We're pretending like everything is okay. Right? So, area code 310, you're live and on the air with Straight Talk. What's your name and where you calling from?
What's so red? That's so hard.
What's going on?
California. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia. How you gentlemen doing today?
All right, you're a
Well,
little bit
Cali.
you're a little bit muffled, man. You're a little bit low than normal. So
How about now? Go close to the phone.
that's better. Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, I just came in on the end of this. I don't really have much to say upon the topic. It's except for like you're totally right about the damage that the system is doing to this country. And I spoke with a friend earlier, and he was like, well, he really couldn't understand what I was telling him. And then I explained it to him. He said, oh, I see now. I said, yeah. I said, if you're a corporate American and half of the employees is going through domestic problems, divorce or whatever, how do you think their performance is going to be?
Exactly. Right.
And he said, oh yeah. And I said, yeah, you was in the military, right? He was like, yeah. I said, well, them guys, wives was out there cheating. Were they able to perform like they were supposed to? He was like, no, I did the same thing.
Right.
So now, yeah, so I said, and I explained to him, I said, so you looking at everything tunnel vision, and it's a lot broader, and he was kind of able to understand what I was saying. So, but like I said, I've been down there to that courthouse. No, what is it called? Oh, the Devil's House. I've been down to the Devil's House. And what was that again? The Devil's House. Yeah, he's looking to he's looking to stick a pitchfork in your ass when you get down there. So, I mean, I just seen some stuff. I seen all kind of stuff, man. So, I mean, obviously, to have a family court and whatever legal systems they put in the power to be, it has to be profitable for them. So I don't really see how when the economy is or the society is tanking, but they look at it as a positive thing. This has to be something where they see long term, where they can do enough to structure where they have a goal. I don't know what it is. I'm not that evil where I can match which with a sinister thinking group of people or whoever it is. So, but they're looking long term.
Enrique, repeat the three things people don't understand the science of. They might know about it, right? But they don't understand the science to really do it well. And listen to this, Reggie. He's going to lay out three things, and it's actually addressing what you just said.
The three things that they don't teach us purposely, they keep it out of our peripheral and out of our direct line of sight. And they won't teach you what they have amongst themselves, which are critical areas of study is 1, the science of warfare, 2, the science of business, and 3, the science of mating. And the truth is that the science of business is also the science of warfare, right? Those two are connected. That's why if you ever look at big business interests, that dictates who we go to war with. Right, and if you look at even business on a national scale, private eyes are mostly hired to spy on other businesses. And then if it's really competitive, they take military black ops officers. There's plenty of books about it. You can read the book called The Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And they pay these people to do espionage on that level, and it even goes up if they can't get the deal that they want or they can't get the majority of that market, they even go to assassination, right? So this is the real science. And then when it comes to population, where like one of the big things that I learned from being a student under the minister is that the reason why that whole movement that was started with J. Edgar Hoover and trying to find the rise of any black messiah, was because at that time it was such a vulnerable position that we played in the economic market. That anybody who could steer us, like Marcus Garvey, it's for self-interest. They had a little taste of that with Marcus Garvey, and they knew that our buying power was essential for the empowerment of this nation. So any movement that would cause us to do things like Martin Luther King did, which was boycott, the bus industry, and show the power of our dollar. Anybody who had the possibility of uniting us on that level where we wasn't our own worst enemy with what we buy was a threat, and it had to be removed. So it's the same thing today, by destroying what was the real key at that time, which were black families, right? We were families. It was a man and a wife. People got married. People's families was involved. We had some type of structure back during that time, and that's why we had community. And by destroying that, then now we have no economic empowerment. We buy the works. We self-sabotage with our own dollars.
Oh yeah, because there's no black. I mentioned something. Maybe it was Ted earlier. There's no black banks or in the community, or well, in the hood. I don't call it the community, but what I see, that damage has been done because there's no black businesses in the hood. This a matriarchal situation, so ain't nothing gonna be built as long as it's that way. So
Reggie, do you understand? Do you understand? He just laid out warfare, and you have too much. You have your, I don't know if your phone. Someone's got their phone moving too much. Like you can hear it bouncing around. He just laid out warfare.
That was probably me.
Okay, so he just laid out the
it wasn't me
science.
this time, kid.
I said someone. I didn't say who. He laid out the science of warfare, Reggie. That's why I wanted him to put that on the table. That's warfare.
Got it. Well, here actually I'm here to do a little bit more listening than talking. So you guys can go ahead and let away. I might shoot in every now and then, but I'm sipping on a little boxing cranberry at the long day at work. I'm gonna eat something, but I'll be listening in.
Okay.
So this question is for Enrique T.
Okay.
So if we know the enemy strategy and how they devising against us, how we rise up against these people, these draconian folk that I hear people mention.
Well, by doing what Brother Ted is doing, Brother Santos, is by having these kind of conversations where information like this gets spread, and then for those of us who are having these conversations, we take that into our homes, our communities, and we do our due diligence because so everybody want to believe that people who talk like this is conspiratorial. So you have the facts, and what this brother is showing, like one of the reasons why I like listening to this brother is because he don't just opinionate stuff. He gives you facts. He gives you numbers. He gives you he talked about the billions of dollars we spend because of divorce. These are the things that they don't have a perspective on it. They're not racially motivated. It's just talking about the fact of what's happened to families, whether black or white, because of these issues that we don't know about. Right. And as we become a little bit more acute, then we can pinpoint some of the things that we're talking about that's been directed at us as a people. And we just share that. We show them the facts. The facts is self-explanatory. You can't deny it, right? And then we continue to proceed to educate ourselves and distribute that education to others using this media, using whatever tools we have, like the brother's doing.
Yep, I agree. Cause like the book say, man, our people passion for lack of knowledge, and I believe in doing self-discipline, doing your homework and your research. it's too much information out here for you to be willfully ignorant. You know what I mean?
Well,
I agree.
so there's another thing.
I even
Go ahead, Enrique, please. Go ahead. Keep
say real quick. One of the things I really like about what you do too is Ted is really skillful at designing his topics. So he'll design a topic that would be attractive to both male and females, but inside of that topic there's a whole bunch of nutritional conversation that we need to have. And that's how you got to be able to come at it, is because nobody wants to talk about on the out front what is really going on, because they always want to feel good, like you saying, they just want that emotional experience.
Right.
But when they actually are attracted to the topic matter that they're interested in, women are always looking for relationship information. Men are always trying to find that queen that's worth even being in a relationship with. That's what we want, right? So it's an attractive way to get people to dialogue about it and then have that eureka moment.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. So Kendrick, one answer to your question is, I laid out this guy, Charles Murray, who wrote the book Coming Apart, and he talks about how there's a class of people who are intentionally creating leaders of the future, people who are going to have impact and influence on the direction of the nation. If you understand that started happening back around 1960 and it continues to happen, then you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You now need to take a step back and look at what Enrique said is the science of mating. A lot of people don't know, I think it was in the 1800s, the Rothschilds couldn't find people who were suitable for their children. So, did you know, Enrique, that they actually had to have the children marry their cousins because they couldn't find suitable mates?
I believe it, Ted. Inbreeding. That's what they used to call incest back in the day.
No, but what I'm trying to say is, as Enrique was saying, they have a strategy about who you mate your children with. And the Rothschilds couldn't find suitable mates. They didn't want their money to go into the wrong hands. So it wasn't that they couldn't find zero, but for the amount of children they had, there wasn't a sufficient amount of suitable mates for their children. So the ones who couldn't find mates, they just had them marry cousins.
Oh, most definitely. They're going to keep it in the family, Ted. That's how that particular bloodline thinks. You see that?
Right, right. So did you know that, Enrique?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you did. Yep. So crazy, huh? That's how important the science of mating is. That when you can't find suitable mates to reinforce the power structure, then you have to take children who are from that very power structure and have them mate so that they can continue to keep that power structure.
That was actually known as the Rothschild's rule, is to marry another Rothschild.
Really?
You can Google it, bro.
I thought it was just for a finite period, so they just perpetuated that indefinitely then. Wow.
Well, as far as I think in the beginning, it was more tight knit, and I know that it continues. It continues to go on, but I'm sure that there are some, because they're what they call the inner circle, and there are those who would be considered not less legitimate, but they would be considered like more of a not from their concentrated members. Like they have people that they had children with that wasn't directly from the bloodline, and those are like kind of like the consorts that linger around. So they may not follow the rules directly, but they do utilize it.
Interesting. Okay.
They do utilize it.
Okay. But that's an excellent example of the science of mating. That it's that important. have to marry a cousin.
Yes, sir. And what's really interesting with the preservation of the family effort. I'm gonna put it like that because it was more than just, it was also whatever skills and talents that was cultivated within that family where they were trying to preserve that.
Mm.
And if you putting forth a whole bunch of effort and you put forth a whole bunch of work, and you know that, when your family interest is involved, your power and your dynasty is involved, you have more of an incentive to protect what's going on, and you perpetuate that, then you don't have to, it becomes almost innate. And then there's other families that learn those same rules because these are the rules of rulers. They used to be just known among monarchs, but because of monarchs associations with nobles and barons and dukes and and people intercommunicating, it trickled down to private societies.
Mm.
And the more educated you are, the more you know that that's the way you maintain power, and that the whole government structure across the world is not just it's not just government. It's literally family structures.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wealthy families, large landowners, and large corporations. That is who the government answers to. So, Kendrick, the one fast and easy answer to your question is that men and women need to take a step back and start looking at the science of mating. So, uh, this is one reason I have talked about arranged marriages. So, if arranged marriages came back, one of the things it would affect the way parents raise their children. So, how do you raise your child to be qualified for the most suitable person? So, in answering your question, Kendrick, if you think about, if you are looking to create uh, a power structure, then you want to do what uh, Enrique is saying. So you want to choose someone. You want to get two intelligent people together. You want to look at certain skills they have that you want to have perpetuate. If there's skills that are beneficial to the family and the community. So you need to start looking at people more than just biochemical reactions. You need to start looking at what are the assets, what are the skills, what's the network, right? So what is your network worth? Who are you connected to, and what does that network allow you to accomplish um, within your family? And do you have the intellectual capacity to sustain those power moves? So you are definitely looking at intelligent people who are mating, having children, and then creating an environment for those children so that those children, your offspring, are able to create even more power and are even more intellectually capable, and they're developing skills from a young age. So that would be an immediate answer to you, Kendrick. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, cause superbly put, Ted. Because society as of right now, it's I need to say this. Um, it's to the point, Ted, where cause I'm a simple dude, but I can articulate more on dealing with people on the intellectual side than the common people. But it's repulsing to me to see how the laws and how society is being ran right now. And I'm glad you and this brother Enrique just answered it for me. I really am.
Okay, good. There's a second step that enhances what I just said, and the second step is between music, relationships, things that happen to you as a child. People have experienced trauma, and it doesn't matter if it's physical or verbal trauma. The brain doesn't know the difference between physical and verbal or emotional trauma. There's only one part of the brain that registers trauma, and it doesn't know the difference between physical or emotional trauma. So the next step, or even simultaneously, is as you unlearn your trauma, you actually free up. This is the easiest way for me to say it. You start to free up bandwidth in your brain's ability to function, and what you will notice is you have a richer and deeper capacity for dealing with complexity, problem solving, and comprehending going on around you. So, in other words, your intelligence, your IQ increases. And people need to be looking at that, not like oh, that would be a nice thing to do or something cute to do. They need to be looking at that as though they want to go to the Olympics and it's part of their training. And that's a missing conversation. Because what I just talked about is one of those things that, yeah, someday, one day, or maybe, or it's one of those things that's always good for the other person, your neighbor, your spouse, your sibling, your friend. I would call it mindset training, right? If you're going to transform your mindset, you need to be as intentional as an Olympic athlete. And there's a lot to unlearn. And if you take what Enrique said and you understand the science of warfare, psychological warfare is huge. So you've been psychologically impacted by psychological warfare on so many different levels that you just think what's happening with you is normal because it's all you know. You're in an environment. And the United States is an environment. Planet Earth is an environment. But United States is filled with psychological warfare. And it impacts you. And if you can't see it, then you keep eating it. And you don't know you're consuming it. You guys get me on that?
Most definitely.
Yeah, I know you understand.
Most definitely.
Yeah. And it makes it easier for you to learn and execute what Enrique is saying, the science of warfare, the science of business, the science of mating. Because the science of business is you want the most productive and the most intelligent people operating and working in that business. You want that. I mean, you want that for warfare also. And as Enrique said, business is like warfare. I mean, why do you think, hell, the idea of strategy comes out of war? And what's important in your business? Your strategy. It's major. And you have competitors in the marketplace. And, some people want to destroy their competitors. Some people copy their competitors. Some want to beat their competitors, or some people collaborate with their competitors. Some of them, they merge with their competitors like two kingdoms. So you have a stronger kingdom, stronger economy, a stronger army.
I sit back and watch my competitor. I study him from a distant like a lion studying that gazelle in the herd to sit back and watch. The sick and the weakly is what that lion go at. Notice them lions, they don't normally go after the tough and the well buffaloes, and they go after the ones that they can't defend themselves to.
Yep, yep.
That's how that ruling class works.
Well, you also have to understand that marriage or mating is like a merger of two companies.
Oh yeah,
That's a fact.
true, man.
That's
That
a
is
fact,
a
bro.
fact. Cause I'm telling you, Tim, money, man, money. That's at least that's what I've been taught. When once you get past a certain 6 figure income threshold, they try to keep that in their family.
Right.
Hey, bro. One of the things that is properly said, marriage is a business.
That's correct. It's a legal binding contract. No question. And if you're signing legal binding contracts because you just love the person and that's the only reason, and you know nothing about them, you don't understand compatibility, and that other person robs you in your business, what did you think would happen? So,
That's really why you don't get no courts involved with your business team.
what
But as you probably know, them elites know how to get around all the court systems. So at least that's what my man was going to, Mr. Rike.
what I'm saying is before you start a business partnership with a person, you want to understand who they are and if the two of you are compatible, if you have the same values, could you run a company together? You know, what are the things that one is bringing? It's like Enrique was talking about the Rothschilds, right? So if I'm an operations and sales guy, and my partner is finance and technology, that's a good start, right? So we complement one another. We don't have to compete to
Yep,
run
and
the
it's
business. Go ahead.
it's
Sorry.
more personal. The business deal is more personal when it's your family is involved and your legacy and your posterity is going to benefit.
Right, right, right. So so
Perhaps.
so you need to do your due diligence in when we talk about the science of mating and make sure you're mating with someone, because if you're going to marry, that's a legal binding contract. It's no different than the business partner you have. That contract, a marriage can only the marriage contract can only be dissolved by a court appointed judge. That's how serious it is.
Right.
That's a fact. That's a
But all the
fact, bro.
two can walk together except if they both agree. But me, I ain't dealing with no legal bonding contract. I'm not doing it. All this advice you brothers give, plus I know there's ways around them legal bonding contracts. So I wouldn't advise them to do nothing legal.
What we're I'm still answering your question, Kendrick. So what do we do, right? So, you know, how do you build? We're talking about building a power structure. So if you are going to go into marriage as a legal binding contract, this science of mating and what you're building together, you have to think of it as two corporations merging. Two corporations don't merge just for the hell of it. Hey, what are you doing? Now, maybe one company buys another because they're about to go out of business. It's a fire sale and they have some things they want. They have real estate, they have uh, intellectual property, so some technology or location. They have clients they want. It could be lots of reasons. But if they're going to merge, they've got to see the synergies, and it could be the same thing. It could be geographic employees. It could be uh, uh, intellectual property. All of those things, but they're merging with the intent that the two of them together are more powerful amongst the other competitors than they are alone. So if you are looking for a wife, I'm saying that's a place to stand. If I marry this woman, how am I more powerful with her than I am without her? And so if we go back to the Rothschilds, it seems like at some point they thought having the children marry their cousins, they'd be more powerful marrying their own cousins than they would marrying someone outside if they're going to maintain the power structure. So I'm talking. You guys with me on this? I know I'm talking a little bit in analogies.
Hey, I'm with you
Yeah,
on it,
I'm
bro.
with
I'm
you.
following right along.
Right.
I really am. Even though it's messed up with that type of deal, I understand the concept fully.
Okay. Good.
You couldn't find no other better suitor for your child but their own kinfolk. So I understand the concept.
So if you're gonna marry
I
someone,
understand.
it's that power structure, right? So, and you know, I know women hate to hear this, but there are costs to women who are promiscuous. There are a lot of costs to her, and a man has to really look at that. I mean, and you know, there's certain behaviors that won't be uh, that she can't hide, right? So emotional instability. A lot of women are like, well, you can never know how many men I've been with, and maybe she's been with 100. Well, she's going to be emotionally unstable, and she won't realize it. She'll think her behavior is normal, but over time, she's just traumatized her brain with each different man, and so she's evolving into an emotionally unstable. She thinks it's normal, and perhaps at some point she's like, why am I acting like this? But the crazier she acts, and I hate to use the word crazy, but the more unstable she acts, the less likely she's able to keep a man, and then that just makes it worse. Now she's even more going from man to man to man. uh, and so
She good for
men
nothing,
men
Ted. That's
have to
what they call
watch.
it in the church world. They
Hold on,
call them
men,
good for nothing.
Kendrick, men have to watch for that instability. Is that what you want your children to inherit, right? So if she's making poor decisions, you've got to look at that. And so we're talking about power structure, right? So how do you build that? And as a man, you have to be very responsible for the woman you choose because she's going to be the child's first teacher and preparing them for the world. So, and you know, it's not like I'm trying to put the Rothschilds on a pedestal, but they thought the best way to perpetuate a power structure is to marry people who already understand the power structure. And that's another Rothschild. Hey, Imperator, good comment. So, and that, you know, I think you were here from the beginning. So when I read that study, that's one of the things they found is that couples in healthy relationships are much more stable in the workplace, much better at resolving conflict, more effective at communicating. Uh, and women who see this is the problem. Women have been told this is part of psychological warfare. You tell women, well, you can sleep with as many men as you want. If men can do it, you can do it. So, you know, it's really like they tricked them out of their own uh, womanhood, and then told them being feminine is weak. So a lot of women got tricked out of what they naturally do, and they've been destabilized. And as Imperator, you're saying, it doesn't just show up in relationships; it shows up in the workplace. And they may think this is normal, or you just can't handle me. It's no, you're unstable.
And there's nothing sexy about an unstable woman, Ted.
For
We
sure.
in purgatory.
Absolutely nothing sexy about it. Absolutely. And it's not. So look, this is not bashing women. This is telling men you have to be very wise about your choice of where you plant your seed, because there are
That's correct, bro.
consequences. There are
Yep.
consequences.
Stop smashing and passing everything.
There are costs.
That
So
is true. You got to be very careful.
keep going, Enrique. Keep going.
You got to be.
Go ahead. You wanted to say something else, Enrique?
I was going to say there's an old proverb that originated in the past, particularly what they associate with the Egyptian civilization, that a king's throne is his mother's lap.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting.
So you already know what kind of rulership, what kind of throne your children are going to have that's predicated on the interests, pursuits, and inspirations of the mother.
The first teacher. Yeah, and a lot of women want to outsource motherhood. You know, they want a nanny, or they send them to daycare. I mean, you know, there are people who hire nannies, and they hire nannies who are, you know, exceptionally intelligent. And they may speak one or two languages, so that gets taught. But not everyone has that kind of money to hire they at that level. It's not even a nanny; they call it an au pair. Not everyone has a budget for that kind of au pair. So, and a guy who
That's true, man. And
go ahead.
hold on one second. Yeah, I was just saying that that's true. That a lot of women who are based there, like we've been made to be carnal entities, like where we look at everything on
Right.
how much satisfaction we're going to derive from our senses. You know, whether it tastes good, look good, feel good, sound good, or smell good.
Right.
And so when that's your drive, a lot of times mothers and fathers, their pursuit and their interest is not producing the next upgraded version of their composite,
Right.
their combination, right? But anybody that is really interested in contributing to humanity, not just on some, okay, well, you know, I like the way she look, or I like the way he look, you know, let us combine it because we're going to have a cute kid kind of mentality, like that baby mama. Oh, well, I'm going to have a kid by him because I like the way his smile is. Stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the level they have us on. But as we become more and more, I'm going to say critical, like we become more powerful creatures when we start looking at what do we contribute to humanity, right? What kind of people you putting on the planet? You know, how are they going to represent what your life is about? Like if you're sacrificing and working hard, why would you put a degenerate on the planet?
Ding, ding, ding. That's what I've been talking about.
You know what I'm saying? Like we want to, if we're gonna spend our life working hard to land a foundation, you want to put a king, queen, god, or goddess on the planet. Somebody that when they look at the source of where this person came from, they want to be like, thank you to your legacy. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we've been conditioned to constantly, you know, watch other people's, we watching Will Smith and Jada's kids thinking that they successful. You understand what I'm saying? We looking at, what's that, you know, the one basketball star, he got the gay son, you know, Dwayne Wade or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, we looking at them as being accomplished people, but they're failures. Exactly. You understand what I'm saying? Because of the children, with all that they've acquired, and I'm not saying that their children's life have a period on them, but as far as it goes when it comes to the evolution of their humanity into their divinity, they ain't do that route. You know what I'm saying? They ain't reaching to their divinity right now. They're struggling with their humanity just on being in their gender roles. You understand what I'm saying? So they ain't even reaching for their divine potential yet, even though we see them as being more creative. They just got more resources than the common average black child. But that don't mean they're more creative.
Right.
That don't mean that they're tapping into their higher, you know, dimensions and propensity as a spiritual being. You know?
And if you notice, Enrique, they pushing this agenda on the masses. If you notice that with those celebrity kids, like you just said, not to cut you off or nothing, but it's almost like they want you to conform to this foolishness. That's what I'm.
Well, that's the reason. Well, that's the reason why they show those people as images to us, and they listen like we want us to listen to, you know, Dwayne Wade and his girlfriend or his wife's dialogue as to why they're open to open gender situations. They want us to buy that garbage, and then put that in our software operating system. So we run around creating the same viruses that they create. You know what I'm saying? And which is self-defeating, and it won't take us where we need to go. Because if you got homosexual, if you open to homosexual, and I'm not saying this to knock those who may have that tendency, because the truth is, we would design, like if you're a computer and you design to work with a Windows operating system, then that's what you need. That's what you're designed to do. If you're a man and you design to be with a woman, you designed to be that way. You could choose to try to crossbreed it with something else, but if the connection or the hardware is not compatible with the software, then you're not going to get the most out of it. You could choose to have your situation operating like that. I'm not choosing that. Right. And as a people, we need to upgrade the type of human beings that we're putting on the planet, because when you study their stuff, like I'm looking at how much money they spend on educating their children, right? How they take the top scientists, people who are creative, put them in these they got people like, a ninth wonder, a musical genius. He's working at Duke University, Harvard University, teaching their kids, because we ain't affording that. Right? How to produce hip hop, right? Because they know it's such a powerful vehicle that they can't deny it in the highest institutions that this land got to offer, right? So now you're seeing producers rapidly becoming more white. You're seeing rappers becoming more white. You're seeing the culture that has dominated the planet. I mean, jazz is damn near all white now. You know what I'm saying? So, and as important as that musical vehicle is for, intellectual development, so we got to be careful. Like all I really want to drive at is to stay right on topic, is that the way we're conducting ourselves, divorcing each other, not being careful about who we choose as mates, being completely emotionalized, and we're stimulated by the visual, and they're training us to be more and more like that through proliferation of pornography. You know what I'm saying? They're training us to feel okay with just running through anybody any old kind of way, not being discreet about how we
ask you, Enrique,
we distribute our spiritual energy.
Enrique, would you say some of this is almost like implants, like implanting it into people, almost like planting a virus in someone?
Bro, it's a book called it's a really powerful book. It's called Mind Viruses, right? And they talk about the concept of a meme, just like the concept they related to the concept of a gene and the concept of an atom. So it's something like, a meme is something you can put into the let's say subliminal architecture of somebody's mind, like you can put an atom in to a physical biological entity or some type of organic structure. Right. And then as you build these memes and link these memes together, they create an association which ultimately affects the decision making of your neural network. The book is called Mind Viruses. And then if you watch this one movie called Inception, right, one of the things he says, what's the most powerful thing to that is hard that sticks to a person? And then he says, is it a virus, like a biological virus, is like a bacteria, and then he ultimately comes down. He said the hardest thing to remove from a person once it's affected them is an idea, right? Once you get that idea to stick, they're going to stick with it. So what their whole concept is before we have a chance to rationalize and critically think, they're already they're planting images through the TV shows, and the kids and children, they're showing them what the devil's supposed to look like. He's a red guy with a pitchfork. They're showing you what the angels look like, some little being on the side of your shoulder with wings flapping, talking about do the right thing, and then the other thing being the other thing. And they're showing us images of what God looked like. It's a white man with a long beard who looks like some type of Zeus character, who's the father, this image of Jesus. And these things are implanted. So even when you say certain things, even if you've been taught differently, the first image that appears is these little subtle images that they implanted through the shows and TV things that we watch. These are called memes. And there's another book that you probably want to look into. It's called Hidden Persuaders by Van Packard.
That was written like 1956, man. That's a great book.
Yeah, awesome book, man. And then there's another book called The Power Elite. And in these two books, they start to explain how they have this concept called anchoring.
Right.
And anchoring is when they start promoting ideas of businesses and products that they want to introduce 5 years later.
Okay.
So they start seeding your mind with things that'll be pitches that will be in advertisements 5 years down the road for products that they want to roll out later on. So the concept is called anchoring. And then they anchor that into your thought, so you don't know why all of a sudden when these kids who've been programmed with Pokemon, when they start seeing these same images with cryptocurrency and different things that their mind has been seeded for, they start making a correlation and they're subliminally attracted to it because they've been conditioned to have those interests by those things. So it's all social and subliminal engineering on that level. And because most of us are entertainment orientated, we don't know that entertainment is the same thing as entrainment, right? We don't know how to differentiate things, and we've been entrained to like funk, filth, foolery, buffoonery. You know, you put a comedian on that's too intelligent, we ain't watching that. Right? I don't care. You put somebody on that ain't taking they breast out their shirt or, squeezing their butt so tight that you can see all the veins and what they got. We're not watching that. If somebody make a song about something that's edifying, we don't want to play that. Right? And it's not because we're bad people. It's because we've been engineered from the time we little to be liking gangsters. And look at the superhero images. The women look like they damn near about to bust out on. They look like somebody should be on a whole stroke. You know what I'm saying? Making those connections.
So Enrique,
why do you think all these people?
One of the things I hear you saying is, and you could, it almost sounds like an addiction. You can literally give people or implant an identity, right? You can implant an identity and people embrace it and they become addicted to it. And everything they do is shaped around that identity. And it's an addiction. It's an invisible addiction because you can't see it. It's not like it's wine or crack. If someone accused you of being high on an identity, you could deny it because you could say, well, prove it, right? And even if they said everything you just said, they could have cognitive dissonance, right? And not see it. So
90 seconds.
There you go.
So people are having identities implanted in them and they become addicted to it, right? It's like, it almost can be an anchor also, right? So you have this identity or you have, so it's almost, it's like the Trojan horse, right? It has a back door, right? So you send this identity in and it has a back door and you can drop whatever you want into it.
Seconds.
And the person is now addicted to this identity, and the person who implanted the identity put a back door in it, and they can put whatever they want in it. They can change the identity. They can make that identity bad and anchor a new one that in 5 years you're going to embrace, man. That's
it's
warfare.
The same concept like the book outlines. It's called mind viruses.
Really?
You literally just drop like you do with a program. You can make a program that is receptive to, they call it malware. You know what I'm saying? Where it looks like it's something the program can receive, but once it gets into the program, it performs the function of breaking that program down,
10
making it either
seconds.
something that somebody else can backdoor infiltrate,
Right.
or deteriorating the quality of that particular software, right? So they're doing that. The whole concept of the mind and software to begin with literally comes from the work of the human mind.
Exactly.
And one of the people who wrote about it was a dude. It's called The Electronic Brains. It was written by, it's mostly mathematical logic, but it was written by a guy called John Von Neumann, right? And it was some work done in Pennsylvania University where they were mapping the mind, how it works and how it communicates. And then there's another guy by the name of Richard Bandler who developed what is called neuro-linguistic programming.
Right.
Where they take NLP, they take the way you say something, the way you structure the syntax and architecture of the language to bypass what you think you heard and speak to a part of you that is literally being commanded.
Well, and
so
go ahead, keep going.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead. Finish.
What were you gonna say, bro?
I was just gonna say, if you use
go
ahead, please. Go ahead, man.
I was gonna say that if you watch, the one thing I always tell my family is, I say, don't just watch the movie, pay attention to the dialogue, because it's the dialogue that the characters are having. Like for instance, I'll give you an example. If I build up Al Pacino, make you have a strong affinity for his character, make him relatable to your struggle, right? Make you like the fact that he's not a pushover, that he stands for something. But the whole architecture of his reasoning throughout the whole movie is faulty, right? I could make you have a strong affinity emotionally with him, and then that his reasoning structure will be easily more downloaded into your reasoning structure because you identify emotionally with that character.
Exactly.
And next thing you know, you're trying to be a Scarface in your community, even though you know that what he stood for was wrong and he was going in the wrong way. That's a skillful way to supplant or implant a concept into a person who may not know how to defend their thinking.
New Jack City.
What's some of the modern ones, like the one that Cameron played in, where he was Rich Porter? You know what I'm saying? I forget the name of that movie, but all these gangster movies coming out, the ones with 50 Cent and all these guys, he was a big marketing tool. He got shot 9 times. If you really want to be gangster, how many bullets did you take? You know what I'm saying?
Don't forget,
look how fast he got a movie deal. Like he wasn't even out as long as some of these legendary rappers at the time. He had a movie deal, he had a video game, he had vitamin water, he had all these contracts in a real short amount of time, and his exposure was ridiculous. And it's not just because he was that great of a businessman, it was because he represented a marketing tool that would feed the prison industrial complex.
Right.
And as long as they sold that imagery and you're reciting his words, programming yourself to his melody, you're going to become a little duplicate. And that's what happened to a lot of the young people who were under that influence that time. Anytime you recite words and you have them in your memory bank, that's part of your data composition.
Isn't that
so like you ask the average Black person, go ahead, what you gonna say?
Isn't that somewhat like being hypnotized?
Bro, that's like being programmed.
It is programmed.
Like if you got a call and response, like just like say somebody in our age group, you play a Biggie beat, you just let the beat play, the words come. The whole album for some people got albums and albums of programming into them with the vibe that come with that, with the videos that was played with that, the energy that's related to that, and what they go out in the community and do. They emulate that. But if you was to write down those albums into paper form, you would literally have books. You have a whole college education with all the albums we have memorized.
Yeah, those are implants.
And what the lyrics do is nothing for us.
Right. It's just implanting something in you, and you get stuck with it. Your whole identity is built around it. So let me. I want to give an acknowledgement. Someone just gave me a gift. Pressure bust pipes and makes diamonds. Thanks for the super chat, man. He said, "Asked woman I'm dating if she would marry spiritually, with God, fam, friends present, and still have the will, life insurance policy, etc., in her and kids' name for my protection, and hers." She said, "Hell no. Convinced they don't care about men." He's convinced women don't care about men. Thank you for the super chat, man. Yeah, and he also said Paid in Full is one of those movies.
That's it. That's the name of it.
Paid in Full. Okay. Yep. So, but this also comes under warfare, though. So if you can
There is.
dismantle the mind,
Absolutely.
if you can dismantle the mind of your competitor, your opposition, and make, if you can get them to weaken themselves, then you've won the war. It's like Sun Tzu, The Art of War. You won the war without ever having to fight.
That's a fact, bro. Let me just make a statement about what Sun Tzu said that most people don't know. He said, "Your greatest weapon is your enemy's mind."
Right.
Google it.
Yep.
Your greatest weapon is your enemy's mind. If you can get them to defeat themselves, then you already won. And I'm gonna tell you another thing that we don't realize. This is what we're actually talking about. When you have access to somebody's woman, to control them, to educate them, to program them. And this is why, like this is why the queen is the most versatile piece on the chessboard, right? When you can program the queen, she may not checkmate the game if you get the queen, because if you get the king, the game is checkmate.
Right.
But if you get the queen and you get her on your side, now you got another piece that's moving through that chessboard, knocking out all the other pieces a lot more, with way more versatility than any one of the other pieces.
Exactly.
So the game is to get the mind of the queen that the king has on your side. You turn to your piece, and now you got her tearing down her kingdom.
Exactly.
So you notice the advertisement, it ain't really, most of the stuff that we see on TV, it's not geared to, like a man's persuasion, most of it, just some of it. But most of the way that the shows are aligned and geared is geared to affect women. It's geared to give them an image of what success looks like for a man. It's geared to make them fall in love with drug dealers and pimps and hustlers and rich people with no morals and cutthroats and, you know what I'm saying? Guys that they want to be with guys who ain't never going to have no loyalty to them at all. But they fixated on that. They all go for the same guy. You know what I'm saying? You go to the concert, what most of the women is focused on is the person that's on the stage, not really the person that they with. And that's considered normal, right? This is architecture. This is engineering. And then when they get in your house, they watching another man on the show, buying his record, subscribing to his shows, following his stuff, and not realizing that they got something just as special in their home. And we all been a victim of that. I don't care how great you are until everybody else outside or the enemy gives you approval, you're not that until that happens. And what happens with us, we get bitter because by the time we achieve that result, everybody respecting us, what we gonna do? We like, I'm not settling for you. I'm not locking down with nobody. If I had to pay this price for you to finally see me for who I am, you're not worthy.
Right. And I set up on a milk card machine, bro, and I yell that to the whole freaking planet. That's real talk.
But we got to be wise enough to understand that even though our women are being engineered like that, we have to be able to be skillful enough to back engineer what's been engineered. And like one of the things I really like about Brother Ted's the way he designs his topics is he knows what we're interested in, and he'll design that topic with a lot of nutritious content with the aim of getting to the audience the things that it would be most necessary for us to really dialogue about. Even though if you generally initiated a conversation with somebody with that level of depth, it probably wouldn't be something they'd be interested in.
Right. So
it's a skillful way of back engineering, and that's what we have to do with everything that we got right now. Is we gotta play chess. We got to get into the psyche of our children, of our family members, of some of the brothers that may not have that concern. Because some of us, if we more concerned about the results we get and the comfort level we have, we're not concerned about that fight and that struggle to make sure that we have perpetuity. You know, that we're not just momentarily getting what we want out of life, but that the children, the grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and the progeny will have something that they can look forward to and they can enjoy peace, which will ultimately give us peace.
correct. So Enrique, I want to add to what you just said, but first, thank you for the acknowledgement. Second is, if you understand the science of warfare, right, which, as you said, includes business. If you're in war and don't even know you're in a war because it's invisible, you're in trouble, right? So in war, you need a shield, right? You need a shield to protect you from your opposition's weapon. And what the problem is,
yes, sir.
If you only have a shield, that's like a basketball team that only plays defense and they never take a shot ever. Hard to win a game if you only have a shield. That means you also need a
Yes,
sword, right? So, and I'm using, old time, a shield and a sword. I understand people have guns. You don't bring a shield and a sword to a gunfight or a bomb fight, right? But I'm just to get the point across, right? So you're on a battlefield and don't even realize it, and you're getting hit day after day in many different directions because you don't know that you need to equip yourself with a shield. And because it's invisible warfare, even if you did have a gun and a knife and a sword, you don't have a shield for psychological warfare. Your gun won't protect you, neither will an atomic bomb. So you need a shield for psychological warfare. You need to understand the science of psychological warfare, and what you need is a shield. Then you need to get in your other hand a sword for psychological warfare, so you can cut
That's a fact,
up,
bro.
and now you can strike back. Now you can score. So you can shut it down with the shield in defense, and then you can take those 3-point shots or slam dunk with your sword. You have to have both, and you need to know what a shield and sword looks like in psychological warfare, and that's a different kind of training. It's what I said earlier. It's a mindset training like you're training to be in the Olympics. And if you're not doing that,
yes, sir,
you're probably standing on the battlefield and don't even know you're on the battlefield.
Yeah, that's true.
You're absolutely right, bro.
Cause I'm reprogramming my subconscious mind. See, that's what I've been doing, and I've been doing it for over a year now.
Good.
So to the ones who are caught up in the psychological stuff, that's on them. If they don't never wake up out of that I ain't responsible for them.
Well,
that's partly true, bro.
Technically,
that's partly true.
We're all responsible for one another. There's no way around that.
Yeah, another man responsible for his own mind, though, Ted.
No.
You feel what I'm saying? I ain't trying to say I'm selfish, man, but just like this brother said, do your due diligence. You need to get up and do your homework and your research. Some of these folks just lazy, Ted.
If we're on a battlefield together, I can't afford to lose you. The reason why Genghis Khan and the Mongolians were so successful is because they understood it took 18 years to make a soldier. So they had policies in the way they ran their civilization. One policy was this: men eat first and they eat the best of everything. The women make sure the men are fed. They eat before the wives. They eat before men eat before the women. They eat before the children. Because if the men are going to protect the society, the village, they have to be strongest. So they have to eat the best. Second point, policy. If there's a surprise attack by the enemy, the men are to immediately, if they are in no position to defend themselves properly, they are to jump on the best horses and flee. Head to the mountains. You will find an alliance, and you will then wage war on that village that attacked you and took your women and children. And that actually happened to Genghis Khan. They took his wife, and he went to another village and said, "Hey, help us. We helped you before. We need help." They took our women and children. We couldn't defend ourselves, so all the soldiers took off. And he said, if the soldiers would have stayed and fought, he would have lost too many soldiers. Even if they won, and it takes 18 years to make another soldier, they would have then been vulnerable to another village, and they would have eventually been crushed by someone else, or the village that they beat maybe would have aligned with two others and came back. So what he did, they took his wife and all the children, and he sent a woman to be a spy and told his wife, "I'm going to leave you there for an extended period, and I need you to gather intelligence. I need you to tell me what their plans are. I need you to tell me what their weapons, how many soldiers. I need you to tell me the layout of the land, and I need to know what their military looks like." And he left her there until she gathered enough information. And then when he attacked, he crushed that enemy like he crushed them forever. They could never come back because that was his nemesis. And they got him by a surprise attack. So if men can understand that if the women want to be really protected, then they have to look at men as a priority, and you take care of the men, and the men will take care of everything else. If you reverse it and want your men to take care of you and the women have the best of everything, then you weaken your men and you're vulnerable for a takeover, to be beaten. You've got no shield, no sword, and even if the warfare is invisible, you're going to get crushed. So the point of the point of me saying this, Kendrick, I'm responsible for every man out there because it takes 18 years to replace you.
Well,
Yeah,
I
I'm
say it
saying
like
that too.
I say it like this. Everybody don't have the same role. Like you might have the role of gathering information and becoming aware and conscious, and maybe somebody else might, they spending more of their time, let's just say in the gym, even though we should be doing that too, but they spending the majority of their time in the gym. They don't have no direction, right? So when y'all two meet up, then you're like the right hand cross, and that person like the left hook. So you play a role, and if somebody is not somebody you compatible with, where you're not harmonizing, they just may not be in your equation, but you have a role. You fit together like a piece of a puzzle with those people who are like mind and like frequency. So like I don't demand everybody to spend as much time as I do, making sure that I'm not vulnerable. And I feel like the reason why I'm in the position that I'm in is because of the choices that I made based on my value system. But because somebody else don't have the same value system as I have, I still feel that that's my brother and sister, and I'm their keeper. So I'm going to do my best to tell them, to warn them, and help them have more utility. And if they don't go with that function, then that's their decision. But I'm not going to not do my part.
Correct. The last thing you want is to be the only person on the battlefield, as opposed to having the millions of others that could be out there with you.
So yeah, man, and I believe that if any man who is a man and any woman who is a woman, like how much information, we live in an information age where you can learn by accident.
Yeah,
like,
right.
How much information How much information do you need about what's been happening to your ancestors, your current present condition? Like how many George Floyds, all these different people that have died in the last 10 years. We ain't even talking about the stuff that happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We talking about right now. You know what I'm saying? How much of that do you need to know and see to be on purpose? And the purpose is, if I'm seeing all of this, nothing is getting better, nothing's changing, I'm not getting off my mission, right? I'm not interested in, I don't care how many comedians come out, how much the entertainment increases. I don't give a damn because I'm still in the position of vulnerability. So I'm not giving up my purpose to be more. I want to be wiser than the previous leadership that I've seen that actually left us in the condition that we in. I don't want to be as vulnerable. I want to do something more effective. So I'm going to be on my grind. I'm going to say my grind. I'm going to be on my self-improvement regimen and contribution regimen so that all that I'm getting, learning, and incorporating to be a better human being is going towards something. I'm not going to let entertainment distract me. I'm not going to let the ignorance of some of the people in my community who are only interested in as far as they can see in front of their nose distract me.
Right. Real talk. Cause people out here drinking the Kool-Aid, Ricky, and they ain't even understanding that mRNA is the first of its kind, man. We ain't never had nothing out here like that being introduced to the human population. So rest assured, like you just said, I'm doing my due diligence. Cause all of us out here not taking the Kool-Aid.
Absolutely. And look at what happened. If you wasn't doing your due diligence, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, someone came up on Instagram Live. They jumped up. They jumped off. Sorry. Go ahead, man. I was responding to an IG Live. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. Well, just let me know, man. I just
No. Go ahead. Go ahead. He told me what he had to tell me, and I got it. So, go ahead.
Yes, sir. I was saying that, because of your frequency band that you on, bro, you're sharing the same space and time as others like you, where we all enhancing each other. And that's only because you're vibrating and oscillating on the frequency that you're on, which determines the interest that you have, which determines the same space time that you occupy. Right? So what's happening is people like you and me, we find each other because that's the way the universe works.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about not being at the right place in the right time. Just keep your vibration calibrated to what you're about. Don't get distracted. Don't get corrupted. Don't get distorted. And you'll always be in a place of utility.
Well said, man. Yeah.
Well, I received it, and I appreciate that. Real talk.
Well said, man.
Yes, sir.
Enrique's a good guy, man. He's a brilliant guy. So pay attention to him.
Take one and know one.
Thank you. So we started out, the topic is divorce killing the economy, and we're actually, technically, we're still talking about that topic because the cost of broken families leaves you kind of out there by yourself, right? And experiencing trauma in the process, right? Which the more trauma, the more it weakens your ability to be able to fully comprehend. Like, you don't have your brain's maximum capacity. So the more trauma, the less effective you become from as a thinking being. So that's a cost that I don't know how to put that on paper, right? And say that costs X amount of dollars. But I mean, that theoretically could cost collectively, when you put, as Enrique was saying, people vibrating on a certain frequency, when that frequency is diminished because they're not operating at maximum capacity, we could be talking billions, maybe trillions of dollars in productivity when it comes to business, warfare, and mating with the right person, and creating a future generation more powerful, that's a huge cost. And we don't see it because we're having a good time. It's almost like being sedated. And as long as everyone says, I'm fine, I'm happy, I'm good, I have a job, we can't see the loss, the hits that we're actually taking. And that's what we're getting to here, right? So there are a lot of hits that have been taken, and we're pretending like they didn't because we found something to sedate us. And not just alcohol, it could be sex, um, travel, whatever people use to sedate themselves, almost like we have some kind of tranquilized thinking. And I heard what you said in calling it programmed, and people having implants. So if you have no way of knowing this stuff is happening, you may just call this normal. And you just go along with it, not knowing that going along with it is costing you more and more. And the more you go along with it, the deeper you go into this, and it's more you have to climb out of. So we're really kind of having a conversation to bring awareness so that people can actually start climbing out of this and arm themselves with a shield and a sword for the science of warfare. And right now it's invisible and it's very effective.
Cause I'll be honest with you, Ted. It's what you and Enrique talking about. It's MK Ultra is a form of mind control, and I forget which one of them. One of these experts penned that they penned it about a few years ago, probably 2012, a little bit earlier. But that's what they've been using through certain TV shows and certain hip hop entertainers and all this bullshit. And like you said, it's a secret covert operation team.
Well,
and we didn't even realize we've been brainwashed.
And Enrique quoted Sun Tzu, and saying that if you get your enemy to defeat themselves, that's the greatest war you can win, because you never actually had to get on the battlefield with them. So
Right.
you can just
They ain't have to drop no bomb.
You just give them the tools for self-destruction, and you just watch them.
That's true.
Programming.
Enrique, everybody, I hear everybody was scared of a nuclear war going off, but in it all seriousness, Enrique, it was like the leech, what you call it, Enrique, oh my God, I'm trying not to get off top, but reverse psychology, they'll have you thinking that they're gonna drop a nuke somewhere, but in actuality, it's the opposite way around. They can use mental warfare on the people than more likely than a nuclear warfare strike, Enrique.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not.
That's true. And that was the impression that you just gave me about the subliminal programming.
And you're not armed for it.
Yes, sir. If you get an older version of Encyclopedia Britannica, it'll tell you that one of the greatest discoveries of the 19th century was the utility of the subconscious mind. And if you pay attention to the history, that was very much employed in World War I and World War II. And the people at that time were very ignorant to the research that was going on with it. They used it to advertise to the American people the war and the propaganda machine at that time, but they were kind of early. They were learning from the Germans, but they were kind of early in their application of it. But as they got more and more proficient with it, they used it in every aspect of the social fabric of this society. And then they even started, like now, with the proliferation of American culture globally, they have been using it to affect other cultures through their technology. So, like, if you look at how the cell phones and why they're so accessible to even third world countries, is to create the demand for the things that are going on in America, which is literally undermining their governments of these third world countries and making them more susceptible. Because if all your people is asking for Walmart or McDonald's or some other American brand, right? And you want to maintain power in your country, you got to give the people what they're demanding.
Right.
So they're literally usurping your control or your power structure by putting their information and using their technology to gain access over the influence of your people. And that's another strategic thing that they're doing. And to us particularly, if you pay attention to, and I'm gonna say this with calculation, if you pay attention to the poisons that they put in our food, particularly the high amounts of sodium, sugar, and with monosodium glutamates, your the sodium and sugar is the two big killers. That's sodium is high blood pressure, sugar is diabetes. Those are the two silent killers right there.
Don't forget about manganese.
All of those chemicals, but let me show you what they do, right? Too much sugar in the system weakens the mind. Too much salt overstimulates the cells, weakens the mind. So you do that and you combine, like the other elements, the fluorides, the monosodium glutamates, what's the other element that they put in everything that affects people's reproduction system?
Oh my God.
High fructose corn syrup.
Arsenic.
They got all these elements in there, but guess what they do, right? They purposely denature the foods, and there's a direct correlation between what a person that's getting proper nutrition, it can do two things. Physically, they have a stronger immunity, and mentally, they feel better. When you don't feel better, you're more susceptible to the lower band of the emotional spectrum, which makes you less efficient when it comes to your own, like your purpose in life. So if you're feeling depressed, you're eating food, but you're not getting the good feeling that you're supposed to get from the nutrition content, and you're trying to push on through life, but you're feeling depressed. You're not feeling the vibration of energy. You're having to look for other stimulants, caffeine, drugs, weed, alcohol. And you're trying to get that boost from those things, but those things give you a momentary boost, but a deeper drop, right? So what's happening to your morale? Your morale is going down. You're less motivated. You don't feel the effort to fight the war. This was something they learned from POW study that they did back in Vietnam too. When they wanted to brainwash the people, they noticed that as long as they were nutritioned and had nutrition, they would resist the brainwashing program. But as they diminished their nutrition, not only were they able to brainwash them, but they fought each other.
Very interesting. Really?
They turned on each other.
Wow. That's interesting.
So nutrition is a very instrumental part in weakening your ability to be firm on your decision or to have good morale. And that's why one of the reasons why in warfare they always try to cut off the enemy's supplies, where they get their water, where they get their food. Cut that off. Anything that would keep them strong and focused, diminish that. So
and that's what's going on now, Enrique.
Absolutely. Look at the water we drinking.
Cause I tell people, you better drink that old mineral spring water, or either that old. You remember they used to drink well water for a long time, Enrique.
I'm gonna give you a book to check out. It's called How Our Corporate Owners Are Killing Us by Jim Marrs. And one of the things he points out in that book is the reason why they're doing fracking, right, is to poison the natural well waters, because good uncontaminated water will, because fluoride was used during the Nazi camps to weaken the Jewish morale, the people's morale. So we have two things that's really been found to be profound in our water. We have a lot of estrogen. We have it's actually three. We have some more chlorine, but we have fluoride in the water, right? So those things weaken your determination. Then you have denatured food on top of it, who Lolita Africa wrote about it in his book called Nutricide. And what the lack of nutrition does, one of the reasons why we have all of this, infirmity. I'm going to use the word infirmity as men. We don't have that umph to us that we had back in the 60s.
Right.
Is because we don't even know that the stuff that we're intaking through the food, chemical, and through the water content, and they specifically, if you ever notice, just do this experiment on your own. Go to one of these dollar stores that they, low income people shop at, or these stores like that. Go look in your community and look at the type of seasoning you have and what's in that seasoning. You're going to see all kinds of poisons.
Interesting.
Right? Neurotoxins, everything.
Sugar
So, and they do. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The sugar is addictive. The way it impacts your brain, it's like a drug.
Yes, sir.
But
it's a false stimulant. Sugar lets you get you excited. The brain needs sugar in order to operate, but synthetic, what they call white sugar, it'll get a momentary stimulation, or it'll get stimulated momentarily, but then there's a immediate drop in the energy resource of synthetic sugar, whereas you get fructose or fruit sugars, or you get honey sugars, natural sugars. Right. They actually give the brain fuel and longevity.
Right. Fruits like mangoes that are sweet. Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, let me ask you, brother, this then. Well, how y'all feel about the molasses that our ancestors used to cook from the cane back in the day?
Well, anything that's made from something natural is going to have a better stance, even if it wasn't the best thing for us. If it was organically made from the original substances, not the processed, denatured, overly held in
broken
on
down
the shelves and in warehouse materials,
right,
you have a whole different organism. I mean, we used to eat pork back then heavy, and heavy animal meats and very heavy vegetation. The only thing that they would leave us to eat, but because it was even more natural, like the way they grow pigs now ain't the way they used to grow pigs back then.
Right. You
right. So
specifically right.
And so even the beef, even the chicken back then, if you lived in the South or you were somewhere close to where they produce chicken, or even if you was in the city back then, it was a different standard. Now they can give you cloned chicken and you wouldn't even know that's what you're getting.
I know you can't.
Right? They don't call KFC. They can't say Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore because they're not giving you fried chicken. They're giving you cloned chicken meat.
Right. Grown in the lab, almost like.
So what kind of effect? Go ahead.
No, I was thinking almost like they've grown in the laboratory.
Right.
Absolutely. But what's the real science behind that, though? The science behind bad food is bad consciousness. Because food is the titration of the information that is transmitted through the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients. That has a direct effect on the power of the quality of your thinking.
That stuff needs to be undone. Diet is diet is part of it, but there are so many, as you said, Enrique, ideas. But I would just say your whole identity needs to be stripped down. Like they used to say in alchemy that the alchemists could transform lead into gold. And they did that. They had to have tools to do it. They had to have a flame that was so hot it was white hot, and they had this white substance they would apply to the lead. And so you put the white substance on intermittently, and you engage that lead with the flame. And essentially, what you did is you burned off all the lead properties, and all you had was the essence of the metal, which is gold. And that is what a lot of people need to do. They need to burn off the lead that has been imposed on them, like this whole identity of who you think you are.
Exactly.
go through that and so that's transforming lead into gold. And you had tools, and you had to burn off the lead. People are living with lead like that's who they are, and not realizing that the lead is just covering the essence of who they are, which is gold. But you cannot.
Right.
It's not the most comfortable process, because there's going to be uncertainty and doubt and some chaos. And if you don't have the tools to navigate through that, you'll jump ship and you'll be stuck with the lead.
That is a fact. And it's interesting that you bring up alchemy, right? Because one of the I call it the auxiliary studies that they don't familiarize us with is the esoteric dimension. And I'm not talking about, this stuff that people concocting nowadays thinking that they deep. I'm talking about there's a rich history of alchemy as a real science. It's the precursor of chemistry.
Chemistry, exactly.
Alchemy being al-chemit, the study of the land of the black peoples, the art and science of using elements. It went from being a esoteric subject where you looked at both properties. You looked at the base property, and you looked at the spiritual relationship or the energy property.
Right.
Right. So what happened is when they introduced it to academia, because academia is the flip hand side of the coin of esoteric. So if you want to neuter or gut out, if you will, the essence of the quality, the spiritual dimension of information, you make it academic.
Right,
but if you want to put the life force in it, you have to have the esoteric part of it. So if you look at how you turn base metals into gold, or you turn gold into base metals, you have to saturate the human being or the element, let's just say, use those and synonymously, with more base elements. So what do they have in the foods now? They got mercury, that's a base element. Right, they have lead, they have aluminum. You know what I'm saying? They have all of these, what they call base metals. And what do they do when they get in your system in a large proportion or a significant proportion? Is they create Alzheimer's, they create dementia, they create all these psychological schizophrenia, bipolar. You know what I'm saying? And this is what we have in the elements that we're taking in through what we drink, through what we eat, through the utensils that we use, because we don't know enough that when you buy stuff from stores like the dollar store and these cheap stores to get your cooking utensils, that these things gradually are designed to dissolve into your foods and accumulate in your body, and then give you toxification in the long run, which ultimately manifests in some type of illness, physical illness, if not mental, mostly mental.
Exactly. Yep, starts clogging up your brain's bandwidth and ability to think. But as you know, I know before Kendrick was saying DNA has memory, right? Every cell in your body has memory. So, and they don't even fully, at least they say they don't fully comprehend the genome, and that takes us off topic a little bit. But there are things that we're not taught how to activate in our own beingness. So the esoteric is taken out of it, and we're just given sort of the base of who we are, and we eat, sleep, drink, and party, and have a good time, and that's life. And you pay taxes and die. That's what we're told, but we're not taught how to get at the essence of who we are. So when I talked about burning off the lead properties and getting at the essence of who you are as the gold, that takes a different kind of commitment than just eat, sleep, party and pay taxes and die. It's a very different kind of commitment.
Absolutely.
And it is getting you closer to having that shield and sword, so that you can not only defend yourself, but you can strike back in psychological warfare and make your enemy rethink their desire to attack you. You can neutralize that.
Absolutely, bro.
But you have to have a shield and a sword. You have to understand the warfare and the weapons required in it. So we've been talking for a bit here, man. I want to kind of we've done some profound conversations. Just someone said organic molasses. and or honey in moderation is good for you. Um, like to get some closing thoughts from you guys, man. What are your takeaways from this conversation? Like I said, we started as divorce killing the economy, and we're still talking about that. We're talking about things that are far removed. Like we're so focused on divorce and getting the woman with the tits and ass and just partying instead of looking at what's actually possible in life. And we've been blinded to it, right? Mental barriers, implants. But it's costing us by not fully discovering ourselves. In addition to the money that it's costing us in real dollars, right, and the loss of talent and brain power by just going along with sort of a tranquilized program thinking. So, what are your takeaways from this conversation, guys? Your final thoughts on this?
Well, my
Well, me
final thought
personally,
is,
go ahead,
go ahead,
Mr.
beloved.
You good?
Nah, brother, I think I did enough talking. I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, in all forms of this, Ted, I say we do need this education.
Okay.
I would say that now, cause I do believe we can flip this divorce thing around. And like Enrique said, the next couple of generations is where my main focus is. My focus is not on what is right now, but it's getting to where we can leave a legacy behind. Ted. That's what I'm mostly focused on.
Okay.
So it's good. So I'm glad we're making good good stride in this conversation.
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. Good.
Absolutely.
Well said. Yep. Yep. Thank you for that, Kendrick. Enrique.
Yes, sir. I got a lot out of the conversation from the beginning with the facts that you laid out about the cost of divorce as a nation, and then how it's trickling down to us, how it's affecting the children,
Right.
the design, how our women are being, they're basically being made a self sabotaging tool, not only for themselves but for their families.
Right.
And what I get from it is just that it's an urgent situation, and we have to start like some of what I came out with is that we have to start looking at the bigger picture. Like a lot of us just look at the end result, and this is how we migrated in the conversation. Is like there's tools to how do you get a person who people that are naturally intuitively in harmony with nature. How are we so denatured now? You know what I'm saying? And it's not just one vector. It's the foods that we eat, which plays a role in the quality of consciousness that we have.
Yes.
It's the programming that's done on a subconscious level. It's the entrainment, which we call entertainment. It's the quality of the design of that, which is not accidental. And the imagery that we have to look at when it involves our own images. And then, like the music, all of these different vectors can no longer just be looked at as, without understanding that this is the stream way. This is the real media vectors. This is how information. This is how you create a being that's in a degenerate state. It's not just us not wanting to do better, because deep down inside we want to be better people, but a lot of times we're not manifesting the level of integrity, the morale. We don't have we rely on our enemy for our education. So they're only going to educate you. They're not going to tell you about what the three main things we need to know, which is the science of business, the science of warfare, and the science of mating. So we can't rely on them for those critical areas. We don't even get knowledge of how to balance a checkbook in school, but we get credit cards. You know what I'm saying? Like, how you going to have a person get into a credit system with all these rules that define whether you're credit worthy, and they don't even have education related to that in all the way up through college.
Right. Exactly.
How ridiculous is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't even, in college, they don't even teach you about that. So how would you expect a person that don't have a college education to be able to function in a world where you can't even get a good apartment without a good credit score?
Right.
So they're absolutely not by accident making us deficient of the essential tools to be able to be functional and successful in this time, and we can't leave that on them. You know, so that's what I'm taking from it, is that it's our job to pick up the mantle of where our great leaders have left off, and one of the main focal points that they always had was self-education. We still thinking that our degrees are legitimizing us as far as being knowledgeable about what we need to know, and we can clearly see that it's not enough.
Absolutely.
So those areas we have to be more responsible with. And then with you talking about things like this, which, you know, by the time you see it on somewhere like Wendy Williams or something like that, it's a whole nother organism. It's another animal.
Exactly.
So we have to do it the way we're doing it so that we can actually get more substance out of it.
Well said, man. And very good comment in the chat. Thanks for the acknowledgement, Napoleon. Thank you for that. Glad to have you here. He also said, big shout out to all the brothers that come forth to participate with their wisdom and knowledge. So he's giving a big acknowledgement to you guys and saying thank you. So great comments from everyone. This is, sorry, was that you, Enrique?
I was just going to say, praise be to the Most High, man.
Yep. Yes, sir. Great man, think alike, Enrique and Mr. T.
So if you guys haven't already on YouTube, haven't smashed that like button, this is a chance to do that. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications. And this was a really profound conversation. We technically never left the topic as divorce killing the economy. And we're looking at all the ways that the economy is being hurt on a macro scale and even on a micro when you start looking at specific communities. So, and you can get a community that's a test market and you can roll that out. You know, everyone eventually is getting it, right? But you test it out to see what works and what doesn't. So, you know, psychological warfare is not a myth. You know, even Sun Tzu talked about that. So we laid out some good things from economics to mindset to the biology and you know how men and women are affected and how that's affecting decision making and how children are being made and looking at communities where they are intentionally creating people who are well prepared for life and well prepared to lead and make decisions for you. So if you want to start being the master of your own destiny, you're going to have to unite with people, get organized and focused and very intentional. And my commitment is to give people information so that they don't have to just go by the way things feel. Like I can give you empirical evidence based on research, not my opinion. And even when I start talking about the brain being traumatized, that's still not my opinion. That's still based on someone's done that research. And I just, as Enrique said, I self-educated myself. So I invite you all to share this video so that it gets to people so that they can have another perspective and understand that the cost of divorce is not just in hard currency and the loss of productive people. It's having reverberating effects, and it's diminishing the value of some people just as a human being. And then that affects their productivity and the offspring they create. And you know, It takes 18 years to create a powerful soldier. And the way we've been creating warriors, or we've not been creating them powerful, not from diet, not from conversations, and environment. Even you talk about music, Enrique, and movies you watch. You've got to start equipping yourself with a shield and a sword, and then developing your children to do the same and to work together. And starting with conversations like this is the best way to get there, to make sure we're all on the same frequency and can work together. And it's not that the world is coming to an end. It's just that, it's I hate to say, like, it's like group economics, right? It's a group that will work together. And as Sun Tzu said, if you can get your opposition to self-destruct, to just eat themselves alive and destroy themselves, uh, you can enslave people without ever shooting one bullet, or swinging one sword. And that's happening before our eyes. So my commitment is to arm people with the mental fortitude to make better decisions and build stronger communities. That's really my commitment here. So, and Kendrick and Enrique, like the stuff you guys shared, the ideas you laid out, I can only say thank you for participating in a conversation that could seem abstract to some, but there's a lot of power. And I thank you very much for joining me in this.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for having this. Thank you for holding this platform down and doing what you do, bro.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Big time.
Hey, Kendrick, you wanted to say something before we sign off?
Oh, yes, sir. Real quickly, just briefly. Now, Enrique, notice something he said. Get some books and read those specific books he said to read. People need to turn their television off to television mean programming, you said.
Absolutely.
TV programming. So pick up a book and read.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And I want to add to that, brother, real quick, is that even if you're not a reader, nowadays you got Audible. Nowadays you have YouTube.
Right.
Get it how you can get it in, but get it in.
And one way to reinforce what you've read is to have conversations with people who have either read the book or can really understand where you're coming from, because that's a great way to embed it as part of who you are. So it's not like you just memorize it, it becomes part of who you are. So having discussions with people about it. And when I do these shows, if you'd like to come up on the stage and talk about things you've read that are related to it, I strongly invite you to participate. I can drop links in the future, whether you want to come on Blog Talk or YouTube. So, this is a discussion, and we're building a community. So, and a community with intention. Empower is one of the intentions. So, hey, I want to say good night to everyone. Thank you for joining. Always appreciate your support. Pressure bust pipes. It makes diamonds. Diamonds come out of pressure. So that's power, to be able to withstand that pressure and come out as a diamond. And maybe that's really what's happening here. So it's time to start expressing yourself as the diamonds, as many of us are. But it's going to take some organization and intention to get that done. So Pressure Bust Pipes, thanks for your support. Always love when you're listening in and making comments. I wish everyone a great evening, a great week, and I appreciate your support. And I look forward to conversations in future shows. And if you ever have any ideas for something you'd like me to discuss, share your ideas. And take care, everyone. Goodbye. Good night.